Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum girls. Hope so the previous lecture was clear to you, which was about the criteria of normality and abnormality. So our today's lecture is about stress. Stress is such a common word in our daily life that I think so most of us understand what do we mean by stress. But the actual meaning of the stress is known to very few of us. So let us begin with, first of all, various definitions of stress. What are the various definitions of stress? Now, these are the viewpoints from different people. For example, Eastern philosophers, they say that stress refers to inner peace. Now, according to Western culture, the lack of inner control is known as stress. Lazarus defines stress as a particular kind of psychological and physiological reaction that is triggered by happenings in the environment. Like whatever events are taking place in our environment, they trigger a particular type of response that is psychological and physiological in nature. Now, this is the definition by Lazarus. Now, these people, they believe that stress occurs when the physiological and psychological well-being of the individual is in danger and individual feels he cannot cope with it. When individual faces a situation and is unable to control that situation, then that is termed as stress. Now, according to Hans Selye, Hans Selye is a very important figure with reference to stress. Stress is a non-specific reaction that the individual has to show in response to a stimulus in a specific situation. So Hans Selye is a very important figure with reference to stress because he worked a lot on what are the physiological and psychological reactions towards stress, and he said that stress is a non-specific reaction. Non-specific reaction is that mostly people towards different stressful situation show the same stress response, and sometimes towards same stressful situation during different times they may show different response. So it is not situation and response specific reaction. Fine, that is why it is known as non-specific reaction. Now these are different viewpoints about stress. According to first viewpoint, stress is a reaction. Now, when we show a reaction towards any situation, that is a stress. According to second viewpoint, stress is a situation, because there are certain emergency situations which make us threatened, which make the individuals to feel fearful, threatened, and thus they arise stress. According to the third viewpoint, stress is the outcome of interaction between the individual and the environment. Now, Lazarus and Folkman, they are basically follower of the third viewpoint, that stress is the interaction between individual and environment. Now, according to them, individual makes following decisions in stressful situations. One is the individual concludes that he has already suffered from some loss. The situation may cause harm. The individual considers the situation a challenge. Now, these are the three decisions that the individual makes while he is facing a stressful situation. Now, these are other aspects related to stress, basic and secondary appraisal, and mechanism of stress. Basic appraisal of the situation means that the situation is perceived as threatening or it is perceived as non-threatening. If it is perceived as threatening, then it will cause stress. and if it is perceived as non-threatening, then there will be no stress. Secondary appraisal means that what are the coping resources used by the individuals. The individual will use coping resources, or the individual will not use coping resources. Coping resources are basically the techniques used by individuals to lower down the stress. These may be your exercise, your other techniques, your understanding of the situation, your involvement of your friends. All these are coping resources. So if coping resources are adequate in the stressful situation, then there will be no stress. And if coping resources, they seem to be inadequate, or individual is unable to utilize those coping resources, then they are going to experience stress. Mechanism of stress means the psychological and physiological effects of the stress, reactions toward stress. So it is mind-body connection, there is psychological reaction as well, and there is the physiological reaction as well. Stress basically is a psychological reaction which is associated with the physiological disturbances. As later on we will study under this section, that there are certain diseases which are relevant or related to stress. Like when the individual is experiencing prolonged stress, then they suffer from certain physiological problems. Now these are the physiological responses. Physiological responses towards stress. And these physiological responses are very clearly written in your book as well. That the liver secretes extra sugar, the body secretes such hormones as instantly transform carbohydrates and fats into energy. The metabolic system of the body becomes rapid and enhances physical energy. Heartbeat, blood pressure, breathing rate increase and muscles get tense. Some systems of the body either slow down or stop functioning temporarily. Just like digestive system, it slows down. The saliva dries up. Dry mucus increases the size of air passage to the lungs. That is why the mouth dries up, which is the first symptom of stress. Your mouth, when it gets dried up, then this is the first symptom of stress. The blood vessels in the body surface become narrow so as to prevent excessive bleeding in case of injury. The spleen increases the number of red blood cells that enhance the supply of oxygen. The bone marrow produces corpuscles to prevent infection. So these are certain body reactions which are followed during a stressful situation. And then the hypothalamus, which is mainly the stress control center, the stress relevant center, it performs two functions. It controls autonomic nervous system, it stimulates glands. Now you are very well familiar with the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system is the system of the brain which works under emergency situation, as it is divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So when we are facing an emergency situation, then our sympathetic nervous system gets activated. When that situation is over and we resume the normal condition of the body, then parasympathetic nervous system takes over, and then it stimulates glands. Glands, for example, adrenal gland, which secretes epinephrine, norepinephrine, and they have the same function just like the adrenaline and noradrenaline, which are the neurotransmitters secreted by autonomic nervous system during emergency situation. So this was all about the stress. Inshallah, next lecture will again be about the stress and its relevant topics. Okay, Allah Hafiz.